All right, good afternoon. I see people are starting to join, so I'll give everyone a moment to hop on and get settled. Welcome, welcome. All right, I'll just get us started with our introduction as folks are starting to join. But welcome to our Include NYC Live, our final one of the year for having a less stressful holiday. So my name is Kylie and I will be your Zoom support for today. And we have both Sherelle Cruikshank and Anna Poto here to be leading our discussion. Just a little bit about Include NYC. For more than 4 decades, we've been helping young people with disabilities, their families, and professionals. We offer a workshop, a helpline, and a variety of resources on our website. And I will be adding both our Include NYC helpline phone number in English and Spanish in the chat box, as well as our help request form and our website in the chat as well. Just a couple notes and housekeeping tips. We are in webinar mode for this session. So when you enter the room, your sound and video are automatically off. So no worries there. And we do just want to note that due to the number of attendees, we might not be able to answer every question for today, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A box to ask any questions. And if you have any thoughts or technical issues, we have the chat box enabled as well. We do have closed captioning in a variety of languages today. So to access closed captioning, you can click the Show Captions in your Zoom webinar controls and the language you'd like the subtitles in. And we also have Spanish interpretation for today's session. So to listen in Spanish, you can click Interpretation or the globe icon in your Zoom window, and then you can mute the original language from there. I put those instructions in Spanish in the chat box for you all as needed. But I will pass it over to Sherelle and Pana to get us started with today's discussion.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Pana, for being here and for the Spanish interpretation by Anna. So I am Sherelle Cruikshank, the very proud Executive Director of Include NYC, and Kylie shared some information about Include. I just wanted to add that as the leading provider of training and information for people across New York City with any disability from birth to the age of 26, we also support families and the professionals who support our youths. And as a citywide nonprofit, in this past year, we assisted more than 15,000 people, and we reached more than 400,000 New Yorkers through communications and community outreach. And this is all free of charge to our participants because we really envision a world where there is love, equity, and access for all young people with disabilities. So we strive for that vision to become a reality. So today I am very excited to kick off our series of conversations, and we're going to explore throughout the winter topics around wellness. And today we have a special holiday edition called Have a Less Stressful Holiday. Holidays bring joy and excitement for family reunions, for religious services, for vacation. But parents of children with disabilities who may become overwhelmed by new experiences and social demands, it can be stressful at times. And if that sounds familiar to anybody out there, then you are in the right place and looking forward to your participation in this discussion. Our guest today is Panapoto, our Senior Manager for Direct Assistance and Training here at Include NYC. And she's also the parent of two children, one with autism. So welcome, Pana, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Sherelle. I'm really glad to be here with you today, and welcome to everyone who has joined us. As Sherelle mentioned, my name is Pana Poto. I'm also a parent. I have an 18-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum and a feisty 9-year-old daughter who keeps us on our toes. I'm really glad to be here with you today to discuss how we can navigate the holidays with our children. I remember when my son was younger and what it was like for us to go to gatherings with friends and family He's a lot more laid back now, but I learned a lot of lessons along the way that I hope to be able to share with you all today. I know Thanksgiving just passed, but we're still in the midst of the holiday season with many more gatherings to come. So I sincerely hope that today's live can help us minimize, if not eliminate, the stress that can come with navigating, this time of year. And I also encourage you, if you think of any tips that you've used during the holiday season, please feel free to drop those for us in the chat.
Absolutely, we'd love to hear from our audience. So let's jump right in, Pana. Let's talk about the obvious challenges that can be encountered when trying to participate in a family holiday, a vacation, or religious service with a child with a disability.
Yeah, so there can be a lot of anxiety when it comes to participating in a family holiday. It could be due to friends and family not understanding your child's disability or their needs, and also around what we consider to be socially appropriate behavior or expected appropriate developmental levels. Another thing that can come up for families is having to deal with specific dietary needs that their child may have or that, they may be afraid may not be accommodated. Another one that comes to mind is the child may exhibit challenging behaviors, and how the parent or caregiver chooses to address it. And then now they have to deal with the approval or the disapproval of others regarding their approach.
Okay, those all seem very reasonable concerns to have. So, is celebrating holidays or even planning a vacation or even just an outing or activity that something that all parents should engage in, regardless of the disability that their child has?
Definitely, definitely. I'm a big advocate for this. It could look different. It may look different for different families depending on their child's needs, but celebrating a holiday should be a natural part of life that everyone gets to engage in. And that includes children with disabilities. Recognizing, that being a part of family gatherings and or religious services is an important part of family membership and cultural life. And there are good reasons to be able to take those first steps, even if they are incremental. And so you can take baby steps if needed. Children with disabilities are no different in deserving the opportunity to be able to socialize and engage in their community. And it's all about how you plan for it.
Okay, so you said we can take baby steps and
Yes.
planning. So where does that planning begin to celebrate a holiday with friends or plan a vacation? Um, and how do you start that planning?
Yes, start now. Start preparing and planning early, right? So I know that Christmas is only a few weeks away. It's coming around the corner. So if you haven't started preparing, start now. And one of the things you can think about doing, acknowledging your child's needs, being aware of what your child needs, and how they are best met from a realistic standpoint. So we want you to think about this in three stages, three different stages. Preparing your child, preparing
Mhm.
yourself, and to the
Okay.
best extent possible, preparing the place and people where you're going.
Okay, I like that breakdown. Let's get even into the weeds a little more, and let's start at the beginning by preparing your child for an outing. What are the tips that you can offer families for planning so that there's less stress and that everyone has a good time?
Yeah, so some ideas that I can share with you today. Families can create a social story where they can communicate clearly in advance with their child so their child knows what to expect. So, you may be wondering, what is a social story? We have a
That
tip
was going to
sheet.
be my next question.
Yes, we have a tip sheet on social stories, but here, I'll provide some highlights for you. A social story is a great way to help children prepare for upcoming changes in their routine. So they can help children understand what's going to happen throughout their day, easing anxiety. Social stories can also help to model proper responses to different situations. So it could be asking for help or a break when needed. And this can come in very handy when you're at a family gathering, right? Being able to provide this guidance for your child in advance so they have something that they can rely on when they're in this setting. So, social stories can provide a visual or a written representation of a routine, which can help to prepare your child, right? So, remember, we're talking about preparing and preparing early. And this can help to ease some of the anxiety that your child may have around a specific event. So when I mention a visual, what I mean by that is using images to represent steps along the route, accompanied by brief sentences in clear and easy to understand language. And you want to make sure, try to, as much as you can, that you're using real images so it can really help to drive that message home for your child. You can create your own social story. It can be based on a vacation that you have coming up, a holiday event that can really help to prepare your child for that experience. So think about the routines that will occur throughout your child's day and pick the one that you think may cause them the most anxiety, and you can use that to create your social story. And you can create more than one social story if needed. It's all based on your child's needs.
Okay, and you had mentioned that we have a tip sheet on this. Where can people find that tip sheet?
Yes, so you can find that tip sheet on our website, includenyc.org, and I'm going to drop it in the chat for you. 10 tips for creating a social story. I'll put that link in the chat so you have access to it and you can refer to it as you're working on your social story. So the tip sheet is right
Okay.
here, includenyc.org. 10 tips for creating a social story.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Pana. So, in the context of holidays, and you're thinking of going, let's say, to a family member's house, and you're thinking about the travel, what are some of the things that you may want to consider?
Yes, so some things you want to be thinking about: who will greet your child upon arrival? What transitions are going to be happening throughout the day? Are they going to meet new people? Are they going to see people that they already know? You can use the answers to these stories in the to these questions in the social story, right? And so the tip sheet that I shared from our website, it gives you more of a breakdown on how you can go about creating this social story. So we may associate social stories with young children, but even an older child, so they still need to prepare, right? So they know what to expect, and it can be very helpful for them as well. So for an older child, you may want to think about, if they have a cell phone, they may have a calendar on their phone, and you can add the event that they're going to be attending. I know for my son, I will show him pictures or a video so he has an idea of where he's going. So he's able, and I do it days up until the event and also on the day of the event. And I used to do this a lot when he would go to the dentist because he had a lot of anxiety around going to the dentist. He would have a lot of meltdowns. And this really helped because he had an idea of what was coming up. And it wasn't just me saying, come, let's go to the dentist, right? So get creative and make this work for you and your family and your child. And
Well, social stories sound really could be a really great tool for families to use for a lot of things,
a
not
lot of,
just vacations.
yes, definitely, definitely. It's definitely a tool you can put in your toolbox to help you as you're trying to help your child prepare for a variety of events and experiences that they're going to have in life. And
Okay, great.
yeah, we hope you will find, these tips helpful. But in addition to social stories, I just want to share some additional tips that you can use to make your holiday less stressful. So one of them is when you're going to the event, think about bringing snacks or preferred food that your child may have. They may have a special toy or device or anything, that can help to keep them calm and regulated. Another thing you can think about doing is adjusting the time frame of your participation. So you may need to leave early. You may need to, arrive late. The event starts at 10. You know that 10 is that time of morning is not the great, it is not the best time for your child to travel, so you may need to arrive late, and communicating that with the host in advance is a good idea as well. Some children can tolerate a long visit, some may only be able to handle, a short time frame. Another thing you want to consider, find a quiet space at the event if your child may need time to decompress. So I know sometimes during the holidays it can get very loud. There's music, everybody's excited and happy to be around each other. Sometimes that can be overwhelming for some of our kids. So think about, if there's a quiet space that your child can retreat to. Speaking to the host in advance can help. They may identify a room in their home that your child can go into. In some cases, you may need to go to the car for a few minutes if needed. And then feed your child before you go, right? We know some of us, when we're very hungry, we become hangry, as the term goes, right? So feeding them ahead of time can help to minimize some of the stress that your child may experience if they're going to an event and they're starving. Another tip, bring a support person if possible. Having an extra set of hands can be very helpful. It could be a direct support professional that works with your child, or it could be a family member, who can be able to come along. Just having an extra set of hands, it can really help in case you need a break, right? Because, I remember going to, um, events with my son. I remember one time it was just the two of us. And you may think that when you're in a family event that other people are watching your child. Not necessarily. Everybody's having fun, talking, having a good time. So your child is your responsibility. And sometimes that can be overwhelming in a way because all you want to do is sit for a few minutes, talk to some people, get some food. So having an extra person with you can really help so that you know that the two of you are dedicated to keeping an eye on your child and you can take breaks as needed. And so you don't have to be on alert like the entire time that you're there. You can be able to kind of lay back and, have some fun just like everybody else. Um, Having someone with you can really create that shared understanding of how your child should be supported. That can also really help. And one example I give, so when I say everyone's not watching your child, I remember going to a family event. I have family out in Long Island, and we were near the pool. And next thing I know, my son's running, making a beeline for the pool. And I had a plate of food in my hand. The food went flying up in the air because my priority is to make sure he doesn't get in that pool because he couldn't swim at the time. So that's just my example. And we were all surrounded by family and friends. So nobody else is watching your child. You're responsible for your child in the setting. Um,
I think that's a good tip for any parent, regardless of
yeah.
whether they have a disability or not,
Exactly.
actually.
That's true. Definitely. Definitely. I also came across a really good article from the Child Mind Institute, which I'm going to drop in the chat, but I'm also going to just highlight, some of the tips that they shared, on how to make the holidays kid friendly. So they weren't just focusing on like Christmas and Thanksgiving, but just the vacation break in general, right? Because it's a break in routine. And we know a lot of our kids they prefer to have a structured routine. And so during the holiday break, that can kind of, we may deviate from those structures that we had in place. So some tips that I wanted to highlight is one idea they give is to host the gathering if you can. So instead of traveling to someone else, maybe if you're able to, you could have some people come over. So your child is in a familiar environment, they're comfortable at home already, and you can be able to manage those expectations better. And then another thing, building on what we said about social stories is telling your child what to expect, right? So yes, you're creating the social stories, you're preparing them, but also having that conversation with them. Even if your child does not have expressive language, because I know some people may say, oh, my child doesn't speak. They can still understand, right? They still have receptive language and they can still hear what you're saying. So talk to them and let them know where they're going, and what they can expect. And so that social story, it provides a visual on how to do that, but do not underestimate the value of telling them as well. And so the article also gives some really good information about giving your child time to warm up before they even enter the event, right? And that part really stood out to me. One part that really stood out to me actually is not forcing your child to hug relatives, right? It's always go and hug auntie this and uncle this. And I grew up in a family that we were socialized to hug. but it's important to be able to respect and understand your child's boundaries. They may want to do a high five instead. So I was really glad that the article included this because this can also be a part of the holiday gathering and socializing and how they're able to interact with other people. So they can shake hands, they can give a high five or whatever they prefer. And we know we want our kids to be polite. They enter a place, they tell everybody hello, but still be able to respect your child's boundaries as well. And making sure that they're comfortable. Another idea that I came across was making sure that they are dressed comfortably, right? Especially if they may have sensory aversions to certain textures, right? So they may need to wear something that's comfortable for them. And that can also help them to be able to have a really good experience. So, this article is good not just for gatherings, but for handling school breaks, as I mentioned in general. And so I put it in the chat for you. So I really hope that you find it helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Those were some wonderful tips. So, how do you prepare yourself?
Yes, that's a good question, right? Because these kids are not going to, they're not going to grandma's house by themselves, right? So beyond preparing your child and making the environmental adjustments, we also want to think about how you can prepare yourself, as Sherelle asked. And one thing we want to recognize as parents and caregivers is recognizing that adults are we can be much more concerned that something may go wrong than the child. Your child may be skipping around and happy as ever, and we're on 10 trying to make sure that nothing bad happens, right? Um, we may want to we may also be thinking about preparing ourselves for that person. A lot of our families has that one person, who may make overly frank comments that you may find upsetting, right? Some people love to push boundaries, right? So preparing yourself and gearing up on how you would deal with this person. Reflecting on and being able to recognize that your child is making incremental progress, right? And share that with relatives who may make, assumptions. So some examples that come to mind is around potty training, right? We know that some of our kids, it may take them a little bit longer to learn how to be potty trained. So they may still be in pull-ups, right? And you may get some judgment about that. A family member may have something to say, but you know that you're working with your child on potty training, right? And the challenges that you all have endured with this process, right? And so you can choose to make it a teachable moment and just explain to them that for some of our children, it can take a longer time for them to get potty trained, but it's something that you're working on. Another example, you may have a child who only eats nuggets and grapes, right? We have we all, I'm sure you guys can relate that there are specific foods that your child likes to eat. It may not be a part of the Christmas menu, but it's what they like to eat. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our child is fed. So they may not be able to tolerate any of the food that's shared. And we know that some hosts may take offense to that your child is not eating what was served. So having that conversation with the host in advance can also help to minimize some of these misunderstandings. And just reminding yourself, that you're striving to make progress, not perfection. That's the goal, and reassuring yourself you have nothing to feel guilty for. You're doing your best as a parent, you're doing your best as a caregiver. We hear this a lot. Give yourself some grace. You deserve it.
Absolutely, 100%. So lastly, but I think equally as important, is how do you prepare the host or the place where you're planning to go?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit, but this is my opportunity to go into a little more detail. So, have a conversation with the host in advance. Help them to understand your child's needs. Just telling someone my child has autism or my child is autistic, that's not going to be enough. You're going to need to give a little bit more detail because what can tend to happen when you tell someone, just tell them the diagnosis, they may rely on whatever stereotypes or information that they know about that diagnosis, which may or may not pertain to your child, right? Because we know all of our children are different, even if they may share a diagnosis. So Don't assume that because they're friends and family, they inherently understand your child's diagnosis and, more importantly, how it presents in your child. You also want to be ready to advocate for your child, right? Speak up for them. They're depending on you to protect them, to be there with them. When someone shares an unsolicited opinion about your parenting or your child's behaviors and or their needs. Another thing you can think about in terms of where you're going. So let's say you have an invite for Christmas dinner, right? You have a right to accept or decline the event, and celebrate on your own terms. So maybe you've tried all the tips that I mentioned before in 2024 at the last holiday gathering, and it didn't work. People were just not understanding. It wasn't a pleasant experience. You have a right to celebrate on your own terms. You can have your gathering at home if you so choose. However, as I said before, you also have a right to be in the community and socialize with other people. So you have choices. I think this is really important because, setting boundaries in your and your child's best interest is what matters at the end of the day. Um, like I said, this could be an opportunity for you to be able to start your own holiday traditions with your immediate household.
Yep, that all sounds really good. And families giving themselves grace. I don't think we do as parents enough of that because we're always trying to be the best parent we could be,
Yes.
right? And giving grace is really important. So suppose you've tried and you've prepared your social story and you've talked to the host and you've prepared yourself mentally for family members and everything. And then your child happens to have a behavioral outburst during the outing. What then?
Yes, so that's a really good question. And I know that if, as parents, if your child has had a meltdown in the past, it may make you less inclined to want to go back to the same location for the next gathering. But if it does happen, your first concern should be keeping your child safe, making sure that others around them are safe. Next, you want to remove them from the environment in an effort to help them calm down. So let's say they're at the dinner table and they have a meltdown. You may want to remove them from that area and bring them to a bedroom or a separate room where they have an opportunity to be able to calm down, right? As a last resort, you may need to leave the event early. They could be very overstimulated, and that could be the reason for the meltdown, or there might be something that triggered them in that moment. And maybe it might just not be a good idea for you to continue to stay there. There are some cases where, you may be able to take them to a separate room and they calm down and they're able to rejoin everyone else and have a good time. So you as the parent, you know what your child's triggers are. So trying to minimize or eliminate them in advance can also go a long way.
Okay, that sounds like good sound advice. So, do you think that parents should take maybe shorter, similar trips to try and desensitize their child, if possible, if they know that maybe there's a longer period of time that they'll be spending as part of the efforts to make sure that the activity goes well?
Yes, this is an excellent idea. I think taking shorter trips and building duration over time, it can help your child to build their tolerance to be able to be in an event for 3, 4 hours, right? So remember earlier we spoke about baby steps and taking baby steps. So taking shorter trips can really help them to get used to the idea of being in these types of settings and being around a lot of people in a social gathering.
Okay, that sounds good. And you had earlier mentioned about maybe talking to or even having the person that works with them, maybe their direct support staff, to participate in the event or help to prepare the child. Would you recommend sharing information and informing like the child's occupational therapist or their behavioral ABA therapist or anyone else that is providing some kind of support to the child in preparation for these kind of outings or activities?
Yes, yes. It depends on the form of the behavior and the child's needs. So, for instance, if your child has a lot of sensory concerns, such as sensitivity to loud noises, And I spoke earlier how these gatherings sometimes they can get very noisy. There's a lot of music, a lot of talking. Speaking to your child's occupational therapist, it can help you to brainstorm some sensory interventions that may be able to help. So, in the case of a loud environment, maybe your child may benefit from noise canceling headphones. That could be something to consider, and the OT can be able to give you some ideas of interventions that you can implement while you're in this gathering. And I wanted to share a link to a website from a renowned occupational therapist. Her name is Lindsay Beal, and she has some really good ideas in regards to some of these sensory interventions that I was talking about. So it's sensorysmarts.com. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Regarding behavior, you can speak with your child's developmental pediatrician. They may have an ABA provider, and ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. Or there might be another related professional that can help you come up with a plan. There may be a school psychologist, at the school or counselor, and they can really have that conversation with you to help you come up with strategies on how you can handle anticipated concerns that may be related to your holiday gathering. If you need help with a provider, you can call our helpline. I know that information was dropped in the chat. I will also, hold on, drop that information here as well. We have a link where you can send internet requests to us for our helpline. So at includenyc.org. And that is the link in case you want to submit an internet request. Because I know I mentioned developmental pediatrician and ABA, and you might be saying, I don't have any of that for my child. So definitely call our helpline, and we can be able to send you some resources as you're preparing. Our helpline, it's in English and Spanish, and we use an interpretation service as well for families who speak other languages. Um,
That is fantastic. Thank you for that. Do you have any last thoughts, Pana?
Yes, every child and family situation is different, so what may work for one child may not work for another. And the same goes for the family in general. So it may take a lot of trial and error with all the tips that we shared here today. But we really want to encourage you to keep trying to find what works for your family. I keep saying this, remember that our children deserve to participate in holiday gatherings, and to be able to engage with their community. The holidays are a time of connection and togetherness, so make it work for you on your own terms. I know we shared a lot of different tips today. I shared an article and some resources with you. We really hope that you find all of it helpful as we aim to take the stress out of the holidays.
Well, I enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for sharing all those wonderful tips and the resources. But I agree with you. This all helps with creating environments where there is love, equity, and access for any child or person with a disability. And parents deserve to have some fun as well,
Yeah.
in spite of the responsibilities of being a parent. So I am glad that we got to talk about this today, right at this time when holidays are coming up. And I just want to remind people that we will be having, this is the last webinar for the year for us in terms of our series, but we will have two additional series also talking about wellness and opportunities and family in the new year. The events tab, and you'll be able to see what events are coming up, what webinars and training sessions are available. And as Pana noted, please reach out to our direct assistants. Uh, and we are there to help in English, Spanish, or any language that it works for you. And finally, I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to wish every family, every person, uh, a wonderful holiday season. So take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for
Thanks
joining
so
us.
much. I'm just going to put up our final evaluation poll. If people have a moment just to stick around and answer that, that would be great. But we appreciate you joining us and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.